Now is the time for us to welcome our panelists. So drum rolls, everyone. I'd like to see the drum roll reactions. So our first panelist for today is Tolulope Olalekan. And Tolu, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that very well. So Tolu is the chair of Africans Arise. She champions social justice by leveraging community engagement and business expertise to serve the Black African community in Sweden and beyond. Tolu has over 12 years of experience in sustainable practices and stakeholder management. She works as a community and stakeholder mapping consultant on a European Union project. She's also the founder and CEO of a sustainable furnishing design firm. She brings design and unique perspectives to sustainable business practices and social justice. Sulu holds a master's in business and economics in Uppsala University in Sweden and passionately advocates against systemic issues. And she's passionate about building partnerships to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensuring dignity and respect for all. So please, can we give a warm IHA welcome to Tolu? I personally, and beyond the bio, I think Tolu is an amazing woman. She's someone I admire a lot. She's a very, very good orator. I love listening to Tolu speak. She's a fantastic orator, and I'm very, very excited to have her here. On a personal note, Tolu has been a fantastic support to IHA. There's literally no time, I mean, to the best of my knowledge right now, that I've asked Tolu for some form of support with IHA that she has not been able to do that. She has been a passionate mentor. I hope she comes back this year. So Tolu, this is me bidding for you to come back as a mentor this year. And she's very passionate about African women. So welcome, Tolu. And then our second panelist for today is Chiwendu. So Chiwendu is a financial analyst with cross-industry experience in financial management, data analysis, and customer engagement. She's passionate about more than just numbers. So for Chiwendu, numbers are a good thing, but that's not the only thing she's passionate about. And she's committed to building a financially empowered future for women globally, especially across Africa. She has over 5 years of experience in finance, sales, and team leadership. She combines analytical precision with purpose-driven advocacy. Her mission is to close the financial literacy gap by promoting smart investment practices, financial education, and access to tools women need to achieve economic freedom. So let's give an IHA, resounding IHA, welcome to Chimendu. Same as well. I mean, Chiwendu has been a fantastic support. She has actually been a mentor since the inception of IHA. I've never met Chiwendu physically, but she's a fantastic person. And one thing you can see is that Chiwendu likes talking about money. So, Chiwendu, I hope that one of these days it will reflect in my accounts. Your passion for finances reflects in my accounts. But Chiwendu has been a fantastic support to IHA, like right from the onset. She has been with us since 2023. She has been a constant mentor, has never not mentored in every cycle. And I just want to say thank you to these two amazing African women. Now, I can go on and on. I tend to gist a lot. So, but I want us to get into the main panel session. But before we get into that, welcome Tolu and Chimendo. I think I'll stop sharing my screen right now so we can move on. Okay, so I can see the drum rolls. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, thank you. Welcome, Tolu. Welcome, Chirando. Very amazing to have you guys here today. So I think before we go into the questions, I want to probably start with either maybe Tolu, you can go first. So how did you get to where you are today, Tolu? Like I'm reading all your bio, and then like everyone is like, see, you understand that we're comparing people to. So how did you transition from Tolu, the young girl, to where you are today? So tell us a little bit about your story in a nutshell.
Okay. Hi, Chidima. Hi. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Am I audible? My internet sometimes can
Yes.
fluctuate. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. First, I want to say a very big congratulations to what you're doing at IHA. I think you are doing a very fantastic, amazing, very important work for African women. And we need more spaces like this. But I also know this takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of intention, So thank you so much for creating this space and to everyone supporting this vision and to everyone on the call today. So, how did Tolu get here? Okay, that was a question I wasn't expecting. I thought we were going to talk about imposter syndrome, but You always have to be prepared, don't you? I think my path has not always been straight. When I say straight, I don't mean that in a questionable way. I mean that in the word linear. My path has been through so many, crossroads. But one thing that has been constant, I think, for me, is that the will to keep going, and also the faith to keep pursuing, and knowing that whatever I set my heart to do, in a way, I will find a way. So it's like where there is a will, there is a way. I think that would be a nutshell, of that. Of course, connected to that would also be that there is intention, there was, resilience, and there was the ability to always want to forge ahead. But also, what I would mention very importantly, which is, I believe, is also crucial to this gathering, is that I found people who were willing to hold my hands. I think I was favored to have people who could hold my hands at every point in time. And I also submitted myself, to that mentorship, if we would use that word, to be teachable, to be curious, and also to always keep the picture of the future in mind, you know, and of course to be disciplined and to put in the work. Um, Much later in the conversation, maybe I can give some specifics in terms of examples, but I think that would be the nutshell for now. It's a combination of all of those things. Uh, and just the sheer audacity sometimes to say, well, you're going to fall, but don't stay there. You always have to rise. I always say to people that the falling is not, it is not the falling. Every time you fall, falling is a given, rising is a choice. When you fall, you must always learn to get back up again. And I think that sums it up for me. Yeah. Thanks to you.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. Falling is a given, rising is a choice. I think that's one of the things I'm picking up from that. And what you said about intentionality is very, very true. So I think I'll pivot the question same as well to Chinwendu. So Chinwendu, in a not welcome once again. In a nutshell, like how I know I've listened to a little bit of your story. But if you could just tell us like how did you become the Chinwendu we know today? How did you go from Chirando from Nigeria to like, being this global superstar. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, I will try not to sound like a broken record because I know I've said this like multiple times, but yeah, I feel like my story is pretty much like every young girl trying to make something out of their life, and just like Tolu said, I've always been one person, I've been a very confident person, and I honestly want to be in big spaces. Like I don't like to be in small spaces, right? So, and sometimes being in big spaces can be very scary. It can be like you're not good enough. And I've never felt like I was never good enough. I always wanted to be in big spaces and I was not scared to fail. I think that was one thing um, that is one thing that has helped my journey. Because for me, I feel like being confident is not that you would never fail because of course you would fail at some point, like, you know, but the fact that you know that you can rise, just like Tolu said, so I know it's okay for you to make mistakes. It's okay for you to be unsure of your path. I've moved across different industries like in my short life, and just for you to know that I'm not scared of anything. If I decide I want to go into a different industry tomorrow, I'm going to do that. If I decide, like, okay, for someone that have packed her entire life from Nigeria and moved to a different country, you should know that starting again, you should know that there's nothing I can do. Like, I always tell people, like, anywhere I find myself, I'm going to try. I know I'm going to try. So yeah, that's just a bit of my story. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Chirandu is, I mean, I think we need to buy some of Chirandu's confidence. So I really love one of the things I really resonate with both of your stories is the fact that not being afraid to fail is the major thing that you just have to keep putting yourself out there. So kind of going to our conversation today on imposter syndrome. So in your own words, how would you define imposter syndrome? Because someone may be I mean, there may be a difference between, oh, I feel like I mean, from the comments we've seen a couple of minutes ago, or just unwillingness to try, or lack of confidence, or whatever. How do you define imposter syndrome? And how can one like say, okay, I'm truly experiencing this thing that is called imposter syndrome? So maybe Tolu, you can also start us first.
All right, thanks again, Chidivine. Thanks, Chad. Thanks, uh, Chidi. All right, imposter syndrome. I think in a nutshell, I would describe it as, I think it's always that inner voice telling you that you don't deserve where you are. As we have seen in the comment box, where people have shared about, what it feels to them. And I also resonate with those comments. And so it's that inner voice that is always saying to you that you don't deserve this. You should be better than this, despite clear evidences of your qualifications and accomplishments. So oftentimes it's this disconnect, between what you have objectively achieved, for example, your qualifications, your skills, your expertise, and what you internally believe, about your own capabilities. So which means that you can be quite skilled, you can have the qualifications, but there is that internal voice, there is that internal belief that you still do not measure up. So I find imposter syndrome, to be minimizing our wins. Sometimes you think, I haven't achieved much, even though we should be celebrating the small wins, So it's that attributing success to luck. Sometimes you think, oh, maybe I just got lucky, but you don't see that it actually happened because you put in the work. So you think, oh, maybe it's luck. Oh, maybe the timing was good. Rather than you saying that actually got here because I was competent, feeling like you're always a mistake away to people finding you out, or am I a fraud? Oh, it's just going to take, it's just a matter of time before people discover that I'm not as good enough. So in a nutshell, I think for me, it will be that inner voice, always second guessing, always telling you that, you don't deserve this despite your qualifications, accomplishments, and the fact that you are competent and you are putting the work. So that would be my definition of imposter syndrome in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think that's great. Before I kind of switch it to Randall, so what I'm hearing you say is that imposter syndrome is like it's different from qualifications that you have. So if someone says, I feel this or I experience this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get all the qualifications. You can still get that and then be at the top of, your career, whatever standard it is, and then still feel like you're not good enough. And so is that what you're trying to say? And secondly, do you have like any personal experience your own self where you've experienced it? So is this something that maybe at some point it kind of just goes off?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, so imposter syndrome, in spite of, so exactly is what how you have summarized it. In spite of your qualifications, in spite of your competence, you still feel like you don't measure up. And that is the internal voice saying to you that kind of makes you second guess even those qualifications, those competencies. So you water them down to luck, or you water them down to, oh, maybe the timing was just right. But no, you actually got it because you deserved it. An example that comes to mind is what I wrote in the book. I'm trying to remember the title that the book that we all co-authored.
Yeah, big notes from
Yes,
your big sister. I
yes, exactly. So in that book, I talked about my entrepreneurial journey when I was in Nigeria. So for context, I built an interior design firm, from a startup to an enterprise focused. And did I go to imposter syndrome? Oh, many, 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 many times. And a big break for me, as I mentioned in that book, was when I won an American contract after a couple of years that I'd been running the business. Now, that contract was way, way, way bigger for my small enterprise at the time. So imposter syndrome showed up even after winning that contract, with this American oil and gas company. I remember thinking it was a fluke, that I had simply gotten lucky with my pitch. But the truth was, I had researched meticulously. I had anticipated the needs of this organization and company. I had built a vision that aligned with their goals. I did the work. The preparation was real. It was not a fluke. It was not time. It was not coincidence. No, it wasn't. The competence was real. Yet there was still that voice that always said to me that it wasn't enough. that's when I recognized that what was happening was that I was experiencing imposter syndrome, despite the tangible proof of my capability that I could take on the project. So yes, that's an example that always stands out for me. Um, and that's why I explain imposter syndrome as that you're capable, you have the qualifications. It's not luck, it's the fact that you put in the work.
Thank you very much, Tolu. I think that's really beautiful because oftentimes when we experience that, the idea is like, I'm going to go get more qualifications. I'm going to go, there's always that more, and it's just never enough. So I just understanding that there is a root cause, and that's probably going to be my next question for you both, but understanding that it's not just about amassing the next qualification, the next thing. So kind of switching over to you, Chinwendu, well, one of the things that really resonated with me when you were speaking is the fact that you are a very confident person. And so I want to understand, like you said something, you said there's never been a time where you doubted yourself. How did you, was it see like a natural thing that came with you when you were born, or did you have to build yourself up to that level? And then how did you, if you've ever had an experience of imposter syndrome, what is your definition of it and how did you overcome that? I know it's like three in one question. So firstly is you said you're a very confident person. How did you walk yourself to that? How would you define that imposter syndrome? And if you've ever had an experience, how did you overcome that?
I'll start with the first one. So being a confident person doesn't necessarily mean that I have not had times where I doubted myself or I felt like, oh, this is too much for me, or do I deserve to be in this space? I remember um I had a business in Nigeria, like where I had staffs, and coming all the way to Poland, and I had to work like in a corporate space. I started working as a finance analyst, right? And then when I started working, I was the only black in my team. I'm still the only black in my team. And then I was like, do you think I can be here? Why am I here? Like, am I qualified to be here? Like, seeing people that have been in the company for 7 years, 10 years, and I was just here, I was scared. Like, I was scared to my bones, right? And during my interview, I was asked questions and I answered all my questions. I aced all my questions, but I was still scared because this was the first time I was being interviewed by a white person. I was feeling like this is too much for me. But the truth is, I've been on the job for years, and I'm like okay. And I realized that even at the point where I think I told you, when I was supposed to be a team coordinator for the entire team. Now imagine being a team coordinator, the only black on the team. You're coordinating people that have been in the company for 7 years, 10 years, and you have to assign you're an account lead. You have to assign roles to people, and and these people, like, how just being black, we just feel like they're better than, like, just being black, we don't feel enough, right? But then, like, I got to a point where I knew that, see, I deserve to be here. Like, I was appointed because I deserved it. Like, I didn't, sometimes some of the reasons why we have this imposter syndrome is because we like to compare ourselves, or sometimes we feel the need to constantly do so much for us to be seen, right? But here, I didn't have to do all of that. I had to do my job. I had to do my job. Sometimes it's okay for you to do more if you can. But then, like, I had to do my job, and I know I could do my job very good, very well, and that's why I was given that position. I think one thing I learned to do is celebrate my wins. That's what we don't do enough. Sometimes we just look at it as it's small. This is not a small this is not a small deal. This is a big deal. Like, you finish your masters, that's a big deal. You do something small. We don't know how to celebrate our small wins. We feel like it's until we do that big one, until we have that big store, until we, as little as, no matter how small, as little as doing something, like, no matter how small that thing is, I think we should learn to celebrate our wins. I think that's where our main problem is. We feel like if we have not done that grand thing, we've not done anything. But that's not true. Those are the small stones, like little bricks before you build the entire house or you build a mansion, right? So you have to celebrate that small first brick that you have put, because that is the foundation before you build the mansion that you want to build, right? So yes, of course, I've experienced it like multiple times, and I'm sure that there'll be times where I would still, because like I said, I like to be in big spaces, in big rooms. I don't want to be in small rooms. So I might be in a room where I feel like I don't deserve it, but I think I have to speak to myself. Like I always speak to myself. I'm like, you're here because you deserve it. Like you've done the work, and you deserve to be. You deserve to get everything you're getting right now, right? So I think that has been it for me, to be honest. And so when I tell you I'm confident, not that sometimes I'm not scared, not that it's okay for you to be scared, like not that sometimes I've not messed up things. Like in the beginning, I was messing things up, right? But then I learned to understand that it's okay. Like it's okay to fail sometimes. It's okay, doing something right sometimes. But that's how you learn. That's how you grow. So because I don't want to do that thing wrongly the next time, I have to go and learn. I have to try and grow. I have to be a better person. So I feel like sometimes we should understand that it's okay for some things. It's okay to fail sometimes. It's okay not to do something correctly sometimes. And that's the only way. When it's not okay is when you refuse to grow, when you refuse to see that, okay, you've made a mistake and learn from your mistakes and ask questions. Some people feel too big. You can ask questions. You can learn from even the smallest person around you. Like nobody is too small to learn from. You can learn from everything around you. So you should just learn to learn, grow, and accept when you have made a mistake, so that and be teachable. Some people are not teachable. So just be teachable. I think, to be honest, I don't see so much from life. I feel life is so easy. Like it's just simple. We just try to make life complicated for ourselves. Like it's very simple.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There's so much to unpack from what you had just said. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me when you were, so two things which will lead to the second question that I have, but kind of backtracing a little bit, what you said about asking questions. I think for myself, one of the things I tell myself, the first time I don't know something, it's fine. Like it's not, because I used to be so driven by, how can I not know this? And like, that's crazy. Like you may not know something. And then I'm like, oh, if I don't know it, that's fine. I get to learn and I come back and I'll become better. So one of the things as well, like I noticed you highlighted in terms of like our experience, like now speaking specifically to African women, because it's important for us to understand the root cause of something. And so maybe still again, it's just kind of like in the same pattern that we're going. So to in your experience, I know this is something you also work on as well. Is there anything about our African experience that kind of triggers more of that imposter syndrome, right? Because I'll use an example, right? I remember going back when I was back during secondary school. I loved reading. I've always been someone who likes reading. And then it's like, oh, you raise your hands too much, you talk too much in class. Why are you like this? Why do you always answer questions? And then people begin to say, oh, you're like an I too know in quotes. And somehow that silences our voice. So is there anything about like our experiences as African women that makes us more prone?
Yes, and that's a very big yes to that question. And it's a combination of a number of factors as I see it. One is the environment in which we're shaped in, the social conditioning. So if we take it back to Africa, and I will speak to Nigeria because that's where I come from. Oftentimes you will see that the way we raise the girl child and the way we raise the boy child are very different. The boy child is often given the confidence early on, to kind of take care of responsibilities and so on. The girl child is often, conditioned in a way that don't be too much, don't do too much. In fact, in some cases, they tell the girl child, don't go to too much school. You're going to end up in the man's house anyway. So all of those things go into the subconscious of the child at an early age, and they affect, such things like the level of confidence, such things like imposter syndrome, like we're talking about, like I'm not good enough. Even when they have gone to school, they have the qualification. Or it's a voice that keeps on saying to the girl child, you're going to end up in the kitchen. That is your primary duty, is to go to a man's house, take care of the man, take care of the children, make babies. That is your first call. Every other thing should be added to it. So when that woman steps into a corporate space or into the workspace or wherever space it is for empowerment, she begins to shrink. She begins to second guess herself because the programming from when she was young and the programming from the environment she's coming in from hasn't prepared her to own her space. And when she tries to do that, she's also shut down because then she also thinks that actually I shouldn't be too much. I'm just a woman. So all of those things are combining factors: the environment, the social conditioning, the gender stereotyping, the way we're raising, the girl child especially. And when they get to the age when they should be have a voice, we have so we have trampled on that voice so much that it becomes pretty difficult for them to own the space. So, in a nutshell, I would say it's a combination of all of those factors. It's quite systemic, unfortunately.
That's very interesting. I don't know, Chiwanda, do you have a similar view, like in your own like experience? Is there anything like unique to African women that kind of makes us a little bit more prone to experiencing that? And I do want to say before Chiwanda comments, you can feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. We're very happy to take that. I think as we pivot into going directly into some of the questions that you sent in earlier on, but if you have any questions or anything you feel like you want to address, you can also raise your hands as well. We want to hear your voice. So please do so, okay? If it's one of the first steps you're going to take to breaking the imposter syndrome today, please do take that step, okay? So yeah, so Chimendo, in your own experience, like what do you think? Like you said something about like being the only like Black person in your team and feeling that way. Do you think that that's an experience that maybe someone who doesn't share the same skin color would have felt like if they were the only, let's say, white person, for instance, in a particular team? And if not, like, why do we feel that way? Like, why do we feel like I have to overcompensate or I have to do something to kind of prove myself, especially when you're working in global spaces, which I believe everyone here is heading to?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll first comment by saying I completely agree with Tolu, right? And I'll use a very very popular experience that most young ladies in their late 20s or early 30s would not necessarily early 30s, but like ladies in their late 20s upwards, right? No matter what you achieve, they always feel like if you're not married, you've not done anything with your life, right? So I feel like these are the things. I don't know if I should put it or if I would say it's cultural. I honestly don't know, but I just know that there's just something I think where we grow up, how our minds are conditioned, we just feel like we're not enough. And coming to a space, okay, just like coming back to where I work and being the only Black person, sometimes because I see, like, I look at their qualifications, like I see their profile, I see these people have done this, these people have done that, but I've done this too as well. I don't get to see what I have done too as well, and sometimes I'm scared to be on a client meeting because these are like high level stakeholders. You have to be on these meetings and you have to be very composed and all of that. But like when I had to be on one of the meetings, I saw that it was not a big deal. I think we just make a big deal out of things that we haven't even tried. Like it's honestly not a big deal, right? So I think majority is it's more of where we are from, our background, how we were taught, how we were raised, how our society see women, and coming out here, you see that it's different here, right? It's very, very different. Not that you have to be different or you have to change your entire perspective of how life is, but then it will make you appreciate yourself more. You know that you can do more. When I was back home, not that back home is that bad, it's not that bad. I at some point would want to be home because, like I said, I'm interested in social service, right? But then, like, I never felt like I could do this much. I never had that opportunity. I was never given that opportunity, no space to grow. But coming here, growing every single time, like people willing to invest in you because they believe in you. I will give a very personal story. I remember recently, um my office was like, oh, they were going to sponsor one of my certification. I want to charter as a finance analyst. So I was going to do my CFE. And I was like, okay, you know how here, no matter how small that light is, when they see potentials, they're willing to invest. But that's the problem with us back home. They will literally want to that small light, they want to turn it off, like turn it off, and I've never seen people see me that way. Like I never knew I was a big deal. I was coming from a place where nobody would acknowledge these little things that I have done. But you see, small things you do here, they will acknowledge you, they will give you star of the month, it's a big deal to them, you know. So I started learning. I think this is how I started learning how to appreciate myself. The smallest thing I would do is a big deal to me. Like if it's not a big deal to you, it's a very big deal to me. And that's why I'm able to do like more things, you know, and I'm able to appreciate even the smallest things. So yes, I don't know if I answered that question, but definitely that's
Yeah,
my experience.
yeah, I think you have. And I think one of the things that resonates is that we definitely do have some experiences that kind of like oftentimes tries to stifle our voices and make us feel like, oh, you just don't do too much, like don't be too much, just keep yourself within this manageable space. So I think one last question before I think someone dropped a question. So um how like how is imposter syndrome connected to inferiority complex? Like are they the same thing? So if someone, how do you separate that? What is even inferiority complex? And how are they? Because there are some people who kind of like, oh, no matter what, I feel like I'm just not good enough. Are they the same thing? And how are they connected or disconnected? And if someone is experiencing both, how do you deal with that? And Tolu, you can go first.
All right, thank you. Absolutely. I think they are related but distinct. So inferiority complex is a lot deeper the way I see it, because it's more of a pervasive belief that you are fundamentally less worthy than others. That's where inferiority complex stems from. It's also more rooted, and it shapes how you actually move through life, in a broader perspective. Imposter syndrome is more specific. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you don't deserve a particular achievement, okay, or position, even when you have the evidence or the evidence is contrary. Like I mentioned earlier, you have the qualifications, you have the skills, you have results, but you still self doubt. But the distinct difference between imposter syndrome is that, and inferiority complex is that with imposter syndrome, you have proof of your capability, but you don't believe it. With inferiority complex, you are internalized a broader narrative that no matter what, you can never be as good as others. It doesn't matter whatever, you can never be as good as others. So that said, imposter syndrome, if left unaddressed, that can actually turn into inferiority complex. So if you don't address imposter syndrome early on, it can actually, morph into inferiority complex. But just to be solution focused, dealing with both absolutely requires deep work. You need to put in the work for both. And you have to first examine the narratives you've absorbed about yourself, your identity, your place in the world. And as I mentioned about the question of what shapes imposter syndrome or this confidence and so on, you need to go back to the environment you were shaped in, the kind of family, the kind of you need to identify what are the narratives that has brought about this thing, and recognizing all of those things can start to help you to get to how can I find solutions to them. So both require, but they require that you extend grace to yourself, because some of it might not even be your doing. As I mentioned, a lot of us have grown up because of the narratives of the environment that shaped us, the kind of family we came from. However, that shouldn't be an excuse for you not to be better if you believe you should be. You cannot stay there. So it requires compassion for yourself, but also commitment, to the fact that you want to, get to where you want to get to. So it could help to journal, to write down, to map it. What are the narratives? What could be the um, the what is underneath why you feel that way. So examine the patterns and build around it, to be able to get to some kind of solution. And that could mean that maybe you need to have a mentor. You need to identify people who have walked through that path, who can help hold your hands. You may need to read books, you may need to carry out exercises. If you like therapy, you may need to work with a coach to help you to because otherwise, with inferiority complex, it's a deep issue, um, and it can morph into the imposter syndrome, or imposter syndrome can morph into that eventually.
I think that's a fantastic question. I really want to follow in a little bit more on that so that maybe you can tell a little bit kind of just share more. So I really like how you separated both of them. So I think one of the things that came to my mind when you were speaking is the fact that one of the major things you highlighted is that being in an environment, right? So what if someone recognizes fine, like I'm in an environment, or I have, for instance, a friend, I work with people and these people or this environment is a constant trigger to either of them. Like, how do you set boundaries? This is now moving to like dealing with it. So, if you identify, find it, this narrative that I have, or I have this particular person, right? Or an environment, like how do you set boundaries? Because I feel like setting boundaries is also one of the things we were never really equipped to deal, right? Oftentimes people see women who set boundaries as rude and that, and so how do you handle that? Maybe you can unpack a little bit more about dealing with that.
Yeah, great. Yes. And that could be a little bit challenging because you don't have control over a number of things. What, of course, you have control over is how you respond to it. So let's give an example. If you are in an environment of work, for example, where you cannot change the people around you, but they are the ones, triggering, this imposter syndrome or bringing out this inferiority complex, even though you are doing the work. Um, which is why I started with that before. So you have to identify how you are going to navigate that process beyond that environment, or not, how do I put it? For example, identifying that this environment triggers me, your work to be able to combat that cannot be within, you cannot place it on that same environment. It has got to be somewhere that you have a bit of control over. So if you work in a space where people make you feel small, and then this is affecting your work quality, this is affecting your mental health, which it would, um, you have to remove yourself from that space, not physically. You have to remove yourself from that space mentally first. Do the work outside of that, which means that you have to have people outside of that environment pouring into you positively so that you have the capability when you go into that environment, the coping mechanisms to handle those things there. That being said, if it becomes a real issue, you need to escalate it. You need to escalate it. You need to escalate it. Will there be consequences? Oh, yes, there will be in a case of where, they can, try to want to, use a upper hand. And I actually had an experience. It wasn't more of an imposter syndrome in this case. It was more of a work environment that wanted to put a limit on my the quality of my work, or downplay my results because the my line manager wasn't quite happy, for whatever reason, or maybe they have inferiority complex. Because inferiority complex works in many different ways. You have someone who just doesn't like you, and it's also coming from their own need to want to dominate you. So I recognized the pattern, and it was effective because I worked very closely with this person. So I had to escalate to the head manager that was above him. And of course, the meeting was called, and I had to name it for what it was. I had to. It was resolved, but I also did risk in that moment that, they could say, oh, this tension is too much. Why is she bringing this up? Blah, blah, blah. But before I ever go into such meetings, I reinforce myself. I affirm myself. I believe in myself. I speak to people like mentors or people that I trust. I bring up that situation with them. This is going on in my place of work, and this is going to happen. What do you need? How can you? So you need to find that. You need to find a support system outside of that environment, whatever it is, so that it can help you to combat, because you may not necessarily be able to take support system within that space. So you need to take it outside of that space first. And to end this, so if you feel an imposter every time you go to work, or, oh, this project that I have done, or this that I've done, I feel so, or this presentation, I don't feel confident to go in there because this, Well, take that presentation to someone that trusts you, somebody you can be yourself with, and make sure you are, practicing with them. Let them feel you with so much. And when you get in there, so it's complex. I don't try to diffuse I'm not trying to make light of its complexity, but we have to find a way to simplify the complexities of it. So, yeah, it's hard, but it's not undoable. Find support system outside of that environment if you cannot find it within, and make sure that from outside you're able to then infiltrate within, because really that's actually many times the way it works. You need to do the work. And I step into that, people are wondering, oh, she looks different. Well, yeah, because something is going on outside of that environment, influencing that environment eventually. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That's honestly fantastic. So what Tolu is saying is that if you don't have that environment, create it for yourself, right? Find people who believe in you, find the strength from that external environment, and then you're well equipped to kind of go into the internal environment to kind of, find that. So I think the last question before we go into, I know I've said it, this is the last time I promise. The last question before I go into the questions that people are asking or people have asked previously is for you, Chiwendo. So I think one of the things that whenever people are kind of talking about imposter syndrome or that, how do you differentiate between, okay, fine, like what I'm genuinely feeling right now is imposter syndrome, or like that nudge, right, to grow? Because you don't want to kind of, would I say, confuse both of them. Maybe what you're feeling is like, okay, I really just don't know this stuff, right? I want to ace my game better. Or how do you differentiate that from imposter syndrome when you're just feeling like I'm just not good enough? I don't measure up to a standard. And then I always ask you two in one questions. Sorry. And then I think one of the comments that we saw earlier on was someone said they feel like they don't measure to an international standard. Now, you have worked across countries. Is there a particular international standard that we just don't have as African women? So two questions. How do you separate like the feeling of like, oh, I feel like an imposter to like I genuinely need to work on myself? And then secondly is there an international standard? Like, is there something that once we are out, we just have to meet that standard first of all? Can you hear me, Chiru, in the first? Okay.
Yes, I can. Yeah. So I think I will start with the first one. Um, it's quite easy to know the difference. Just like it's been said like over and over, is imposter syndrome is when the evidences are glaring. You know you're qualified for this, but you just don't feel confident that still don't feel like you deserve this, right? So there's a difference with when you obviously don't qualify, you obviously don't know these things, and then you need to grow. So one important thing is you being, there's a thin line between being confident and arrogant, right? You know, you're confident that you know this thing. So yeah, so there's a thin line between being confident and arrogant. So I feel like it's okay, and that's why I keep saying that it's okay that you don't know something. It's okay. I think working in the space that I have worked, I've realized that it's okay that you don't know something. So when you have admitted that okay, I honestly do not know this thing, then that's like the beginning. That's where you would now start wanting to learn, and then you have to help yourself by trying to learn, asking people that have been there, asking questions. One of our problems is we don't like to ask questions, we don't like to do the work, we don't like to read, and these are the things. So those are like two distinct things. They are like two different things, right? And then moving on to the second question you asked about, if I can, yeah, what was the second question again? It was in my head just right now.
I think that I asked about top of my head right now. Oh yeah, I I am not able to remember at the top of my head, and if someone
Okay, okay,
remembers,
okay.
I think it was the question about international environment.
oh
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So
Is there an
if there was a
international
standard,
standard?
okay, so I don't want to say, of course there's a standard. Of course, there's always a standard, right? But I feel like the standard is still the same. Like, we don't give ourselves so much credit here in Africa. I don't know why we don't give ourselves so much credit. Coming here, I felt like studying here because I came here doing my masters. I felt like, oh, studying here will be different, but these guys don't know what we go through in Africa to write an exam. They need to go through our standard and see that we have standards in Africa. We definitely do have standards. The exams they are chilled. Come to Africa and you're sweating, like you can't sleep the entire night. Like literally, like you feel like you're gonna fail before you write the exam. Here is chilled, because they are very, I think, they allow you research, they allow you, like, it's a bit chilled, but like it's not the kind of pressure we feel just writing jam alone, writing WAEC alone, writing these global exams there is hard. It's literally so hard in Africa, but it's different here. So yes, there is a standard, but is the standard different from what we have in Africa? I don't think so. I feel like Africa is equipped. We just and the truth is, it's okay for you to start from the bottom. Where our problem is, because we don't have the kind of exposure they have here. Not that we don't know these things, but we just don't have exposure, right? So it's okay for you to start small. For example, you're an accountant in Nigeria, and then it's a different thing coming here where you have to um um manage accounts that run across the entire EMEA, that's Europe, Middle East, and Africa, right? So it's okay for you to start as a junior. I know you are a senior accountant in Nigeria. It's okay for you to start as a junior here, so you understand how it works. They use like better applications. They have access to these things that we don't have in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we might be using SAP or something, but here there are applications that they use here. They are, like, yes. So in that sense, yes, there's a different standard here in that sense, right? But is it that you can't fit in? Of course, yes. You just have to start. Is it that you can't fit in? Sorry, of course, no. You just have to start from. It's okay for you to start from the scratch. Some people are just too proud. They don't want to start from, oh, I was a senior accountant back in Nigeria. I was a manager. It's okay for you to start as a junior accountant. It's okay. You're going to get there. And the truth is, I remember I was having that interview when I was having my interview, and I started as a junior analyst, by the way. And they were like, you came as you were a team this, I said, if there's anything I would tell, if there's anything, I told her that if there's anything I'm going to say to you today is, don't worry, my performance would show. That's it. My performance will show. Things happened to me that were not ordinary. I remember when I wanted to get my promotion within less than a year, and HR was like, nah, by the books. My manager was like, we're not going to do by the books today because she has proved herself. So we're not going to do by the books today. So, and that's what I'm saying. So yes, is there a standard? Yes, there is a standard. And then the problem is being able to recognize when to start, where to start from. So it's okay for you to start from the bottom. That's fine. That's fine because we're not used to some of these things that they use here. We are not so exposed like that. So yes, in that sense.
Okay.
But aside that, we have like, yeah, there are very brilliant minds in Africa. I promise you. I promise you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joanna. I think one of the things that I pick from what you said is that difference is not the same thing as easy. Just because we have maybe different set of training doesn't mean that you can't fit in anywhere in the world. So one of the things I want you to go in today for those who are attending is that we're coming from very different places, we're trained very differently, but you have transferable skills that can transfer across anywhere you find yourself in, and you should not find yourself like, thinking that you're not good enough. I think Tolu, did you want to say something? I think I heard you whispering, and then I think we can take the first question that we have in two. So I think Twain, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And if you do want to say something, please raise your hands. Is there a link between imposter syndrome and emotional regulation? Um, I do want to give a disclaimer. Tolu is not a psychologist or therapist, and you can tell us if you are, Tolu. But do you have an idea of that? So do you want to chip in a little bit to the question we asked earlier on, and then maybe try to answer Swain's question? Is there a link between imposter syndrome and emotional regulation?
Yeah, so thanks for that disclaimer. I'm not a psychologist. So please do not take this as a professional advice when it comes to emotional regulation. But thank you, Chiwene. Just to add to the question around, is there an international standard? I would say yes. That depends on where you're operating, internationally. And I'm trying to play the devil's advocate a little bit in here because what we have also seen is that when people, and again, this goes back to how we have raised professionals in African countries, which is getting better, and I hope it will continue to get better. It also goes back to our educational system, and so on. When you compare it to, the West, I live in Sweden, so in Sweden is one of the Scandinavian countries. It's an egalitarian society, so many of these things are quite advanced. The workspace, there is a level of professionalism you're not allowed to fall below, just because it would affect the quality of the whole. And that is not only in the white collar or workspaces, it is also even in blue collar or, hands labor, whether you're a mechanic, whether you are an electrician. There is a standard of work that it cannot fall below. It just cannot. And that's embedded into the work culture across board. So if you are coming from an environment where, for example, you don't pay attention to, for example, how to keep in time, being able to deliver quality work, or maybe, the way in which you make presentations, that can very much affect your opportunities. So I say that to say that adaptability is important, to some of these standards. One thing that I appreciate a lot about when we come from Africa to this place is that we have the rigor, to adjust and to adapt. And like Chiwindu said, the systems here, for example, the school system is quite chilled. It's not the same as we have, back home, or many of our countries back home, where if you want to write here, they give you home exam, right? You're going to go home, do your exam, because it's more of critical thinking. It's not about copy and paste. Nobody does copy and paste here. They're going to give you a case study. You're going to go home. You're going to have a weekend exam. Nobody sits in class and is doing exam and you memorize. They don't need memorization. They need you to critically look at a particular case study. What would you do? How would you? Because they are preparing you for the real world. So yes, there is a standard. However, that being said, that doesn't mean that you should shrink or to try to fit into and make them and try to become a smaller version of yourself, or try to mirror communication styles or suppress your perspective. In fact, if it is anything, they appreciate, well, in the healthy spaces, that you speak up. That's why when you gave an example earlier, Chidima, about, the American girl, the Chinese, and so on. Yes, they because that is school here. School here is tell us what you're thinking. Work here is we don't need you to hush hush. We need you to talk. We need you to share your experience. We need you to bring your own perspective into this, even if it's coming from a cultural perspective, right? So the thinking is, for many of us, or who have going through imposter syndrome, is that, oh, I don't want to be visibly different. Oh, I don't want them to notice I belong here. Well, there is a reason you belong there. And we're not talking arrogance, we're talking confidence. What's the difference between arrogance and confidence? And you have to own that space because you've done that work. So yes, there is a standard. However, that doesn't mean that you should shrink and try to fit and, kind of remove your own authenticity. No, adapt, but remain authentic, right? Adapt to, and when I say adapt, I mean that in terms of what are the working norms here? If I need to be here on time, if I need to do this, how am I supposed to? So those are, the functional ways, but don't shrink and say, how because I'm from Nigeria, and maybe there's a way I'm not supposed to do. Well, no, here, I mean, I run an NGO here, Africans Horizon. We have events from speaking to the mayor to the people. They are there, they are in their offices, they are doing their own work. We're also doing our own work. We come together, we sit, we have a conversation, and we talk about what we need to talk about. And, and everyone, and we just keep it moving in that direction. So, but that's that about that. But to difference between emotional regulation and imposter syndrome, was that a question? Was that a difference
Yeah.
or?
Is there a link between both of them?
Is there a link between both of them? In a sense, I believe yes. And that's because my understanding of emotional regulation, which also comes as an offshoot of when we talk about emotional intelligence, is that ability to be able to regulate our emotions, to be able to respond to other people's emotions, and so on and so forth. I think there is a link there. The more emotionally regulated you are, the better for you to combat imposter syndrome, I believe. Because imposter syndrome, again, as we have mentioned, is this inability of feeling inadequate. The more emotionally regulated, informed you are aware. So there is a thing to be aware And then awareness is good because then you are one step closer to how can I deal with this. But if you don't have emotional regulation or emotional awareness, then maybe you don't even recognize that you are in the space of, dealing with imposter syndrome. So my simple answer to that is there is a link. I believe personally that the more emotionally regulated you are, the better you are, to deal with imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tolu. That's amazing. Once again, if you have any question, please feel free to raise your hands here or put in the chat box. So we got some previous questions ahead of this time. So Chimendo, I want you to go first as well. So this is a question from someone. I mostly feel like I don't fit anywhere. I've tried to look for jobs but have failed. I feel like I am a reject. So this is someone's thoughts about themselves. And I guess the question to you guys, and Chwendu, you can go first, is how do they combat this? Like they feel like they've tried and they feel like they're rejects. Like how do they combat that? So Chwendu, you can go first.
Um, yeah, so I think first things first is realizing, okay, so I think this person in, if I'm getting it correctly, more of applications like for jobs, right, is looking at, okay, how are we applying? What are you applying for? For example, when I came here, I had that same problem where I kept on applying, I kept on getting rejections, rejections, rejections. I had to sit myself down at some point and I'm like, okay, how does it work here? Am I doing something wrong? Not because I'm not good enough, but then I feel like I did not understand the environment that I was in. And maybe I couldn't have used my CV format the way I was supposed to use it. I had to go online to research. I think one of the things that we don't like to do is we don't like to research. Just feel like, and then you don't always have to work with other people's story. Your story is different, right? So I think we should learn to research and see, okay, what are we doing wrong? You have to just take a pause and ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? I think at that time I had to go on YouTube. I was like, okay, how does it work here? Job applications here in Poland, how does it work and all of that? And I remember seeing one YouTube video that says that before you even get to the next stage, there's this AI filter that filters the CVs and all of that. So what I did was I was trying to use AI to combat AI. So what I did was there was a format, I think they filtered CVs that had like face on it. Like your CV has to be like plain Word document, and then it must have some keywords that the AI has to pick out and move it to the next one. Make it easy for the HR department, something like that. I saw a video like that, and what I did was, okay, I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, this is I'm applying for an accounting role. I had to put it on ChatGPT. Okay, put my fine tune my CV to suit this role and put all the keywords that I needed. So for every role that I wanted, I made the different CVs for that. And I decided I gave myself a target. I decided to apply, and I saw it different, right? And this time I was now moving to the next stage. I said, okay, good. So I was not moving past the next stage because during the interview, maybe I would just mess up or something. Then I started realizing that the questions were the same in some way, and I started saying, okay, so I think I should answer this question this way. I should answer this question. I started researching again. I went back. I'm like, I started asking questions, asking other people that work in these office spaces. I was like, if you ask this question, what would you say? And that's why I keep on hammering on asking questions. People just don't want to ask questions. Or, we have this mentality that, yes, I know sometimes there are some things you can keep to yourself, but there are sometimes that you need to ask these questions because you're not an island. You need to know what's happening. So yeah, um, what I would say to that person is try to reset, take a break, take a break. It's okay for you to take a break and find out what you're doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. There's something that is not just done right, right? So you just have to, do you have to do your CV again? Do you need professional help? Do you need to talk to someone? Or I have someone in that space. Can I ask questions? Just ask questions. And I believe that questions would change the entire dynamics of what's happening with you, right? So, but like, there's nothing wrong. I promise you. You just need to ask questions and just take a break.
That's really amazing. I love what you said, like research, research, research. You need to feel like, oh, they hate me, nothing is working out, and not like sitting down to ask. So, I don't know, Tolu, do you want to maybe chip in a little bit to that question, and then we can maybe ask another one as well. I know our time is running very quickly. I
No,
can
no,
read
I
the
think,
question
I
again
think,
if you want me
yeah,
to.
I
Okay.
think the most have been said by Chiwindu, and what I would just add is just to echo, the point around, don't beat yourself down. Of course, reflect, hold up the mirror, because that's something I encourage people to do. It's easy to blame, and yes, I'm not saying that those challenges are in there, but having done all of that, it's just to extend grace to yourself and give yourself time. And
Mm,
if path A is not working, um, retweak it. The goal should remain the same, but the path to getting there can be many different paths anyway. So you have to go back to the drawing board and see, is there something that you're still not doing? What is the data? What is the feedback? Take the
mm,
data, because failure is data, in quote. Failure, I'm using the word failure in quote, is data. We don't like the word failure,
mm,
but the more you fail, the more you've got to, the more you are learning from failure. That's good data, because that's saying there's something that I'm still not doing. What is it that I have? So take that feedback and use it
mm.
to reset the process. So,
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Tolu. I don't see any hands raised, so I think I'll also ask another question, and Chimadi, you can go first as well. So someone says, how do you come out of a situation of feeling you're not good enough, you don't have enough, or your age gap is succeeding better than you are? So I'll take it again. How do you come out from a situation of feeling you're not good enough, you don't have enough, your age gap is succeeding better than you are? And I think earlier on, one of the comments that we saw is that, oh, there's just other people who are doing better or your age mates are succeeding better. Like, how do you deal with that situation? And Chidi, you can go first, then Tolu, you can follow up.
I think for that, I stopped comparing. I don't compare myself with people. I try to compare myself with my previous, like with my past years, right? Um, I realized that we don't have the same path. We are all, even as siblings, you would live this world differently, right? I'm a twin, by the way, so I think I've come to an understanding that we came together, but we are going to live together. We have different paths. We are both in two different line of works, like nothing similar about me, not even the gender to begin with. So we're two different people. And I don't compare myself with people. I think that's where the main problem is. We tend to compare ourselves with our peers, with our age mates, and all of that. No, you have to give yourself some grace. What you should compare yourself with is your past. Just look at, am I growing? Am I better than how I was yesterday? I think one thing for me is I want to meet someone next year and they see that there's a difference with last year. Like I have grown, every year I have grown at my pace, not at someone else's pace, right? Not because, oh, this person is here. And now I think I will use this analogy. I always tell people that sometimes we don't know that comparing ourselves to people can even limit us in a way. If, for example, maybe someone is a manager here and you have the capacity to be a director, literally, but because you just want to be that person so bad, and then you see that capacity that you have, you shrink it so much because you just want to be that person so bad, you can even be more. That's the thing. Like you can be better. So the moment to stop comparing yourself with people and start saying, how do I think what you should say to yourself every day is, I want to be better than I was last year. I want someone to see me tomorrow and I'm different from who I was last year, or I have grown. And it's okay if it's taking time. It's okay if it's not last year. It's okay if it's 2 years ago. You know, the point is you have to start comparing yourself with yourself and not any other person. Your achievement should be, okay, I'm done with my BSc. I think this is my path. Maybe I need to do my master's, or I need, like, it has to be yourself, because the moment you start comparing yourself with people, you don't only feel that way, but then you also limit your capacity and capability to do even more, because you might have the capacity to do more, but because you're comparing yourself with someone, you're limiting yourself. So like these are the things that you need to look at and just know that you're not doing badly at all you know. So
That's
yeah, I don't know if I answered that question, but that's how I see
that's
it.
really That's very beautiful. I think one of the things that really struck to me is what you said about, how when comparing yourself with others, you actually limit yourself, and that's something that, I haven't thought of it in that way in a while. So I think you did a perfect job in answering that question. Um, I think I'll just probably just because of time, I'll ask Tolu the next question. I think Chimendo has already done a fantastic job in what you just said right now. So I think so I think we have a question in the chat box from Hadiza. She said, I feel scared and anxious talking to people new, especially when they are officials or people I don't know personally. I feel scared of their response that it makes me recoil and procrastinate talking to them. How do I overcome such emotion? Okay. So Hadiza, I'm told you can take Hadiza's question and then Twine, if you can pronounce your name very well when you ask, please let us know. So Tolu, how does this person handle this? And is this imposter syndrome or what's going on here? Maybe you can start with that.
All right. Yeah. And I want to say that there's nothing wrong with you. This is very common to the best of us, even. And that particular question resonates with me because, as I mentioned, I I founded an NGO here in Sweden, and most of the work deals with the city, with people in government. I have conversations with people like the mayor, deputy mayors, head of parastatals. This is like my everyday life, kind of. And when I started, the first time I would go speak to a deputy mayor, it was an issue that came up in the community, and we needed to go to our office and we needed to have that conversation. And I was to be the spokesperson. So it was really my first time coming up close, to people in power in that way. And did I feel imposter syndrome? 100%, if not 150%, because I was being careful what I was going to say. How was it going to be received? Will I be communicating well? And so on and so forth. But one thing that helped me before I prepared while preparing, and I want to emphasize on preparation and also what we talked about having an environment of people, who believe in you, or can mentor you through this kind of processes, because it's not the easiest path in some cases. I made sure that I researched what we were going to talk about. I was very confident in that subject matter. Because one thing you also always have to remember, the moment you step on a platform or in front of someone, whatever, the depth of what you want to talk about becomes more important than how you're going to say it. It consumes you after a while because it's your subject matter. It's you. It's what you do. It's what you know. And before you know it, the confidence takes you over. And that's regardless of who is sitting in front of you. I'll say that to say that be first and foremost, be an expert in what you want to go talk about. Believe me, I promise you that confidence comes to you in a way that you may even you haven't anticipated, before. So, but would you feel anxious at first? Yes. But I'm saying that it's not just a peculiar problem to you, or that is the best speakers in this world will tell you the moment they get on stage, everybody feels anxiety. That is the natural human stuff. However, what helps you to beat that anxiety in talking to new people or officials or people that you don't know personally is the depth of your expertise in what you're talking about, how confident you are in that subject matter. So own it. And that is how we also beat imposter syndrome. So you will feel the scarcity, you will feel that the responses that make you recall, and maybe they would come, with some kind of approach. I give you another example. 2 weeks ago, we were having a fireside chat with one of the deputy mayors in charge of human rights and development, and it was a very sensitive topic on racism, especially racism that affects people of African descent. A study has been carried out in that particular, subject matter. The first thing I did was to find those researchers who did the study. So I went to the university and I sat with them and I said, "Walk me through this study that you have done, because we're going to have this conversation with this person. I want to speak from a place of not just lived experiences, but data and facts." And I went through that process, and the same researcher was in the room. We sat across. So No question this person was bringing up. The person's subject matter was sitting there. I had gone through the research myself. I have the lived experiences of the community. So I owned that space. It doesn't matter who they were sitting there. And I'm not saying own it with arrogance. I'm saying own it with confidence. Your debt, it doesn't matter who you're speaking to. Be an expert in what you want to talk about and go into that space and own it. And before you know it, president, whatever, everybody, people will sit with us and they talk to us. They also know when you're speaking from a place of informed. So actually, they are the ones who will start feeling anxious, not you.
That's, oh my God, Tulu, that's fantastic. As you said, preparation, preparation, preparation. I was preparing for an interview. I told my mentor, then I was like, oh, I feel a little bit anxious. And then she said, Chidima, if you prepare, you're going to feel less anxious. And that was really the truth, right? There's always going to be that thing of like, oh my God, am I going to do well? But there's this certain confidence that preparation gives. So I think Twin and I probably am not pronouncing your name very well. You raised your hands earlier on. I know our time is really fast spent. So we only take Tweeny's question and I think the question from Esther. So Tina, you can.
Good afternoon. My name is Twine Saba. I am from Uganda. And my question is on being a pioneer in an industry. So for example, when you're trying to do something new that you have seen done, but not done to the scale at which you want to do it, the imposter syndrome creeps in because you're like, why is it me who's pushing to do it at such a massive scale? Have other people not seen the need for this thing to be done? So my question is, when you're working towards something and you have not yet seen the rewards, and it's also something that you have not seen other people's rewards because they have not pursued it to that magnitude, and maybe there are people who have pursued it to that magnitude, but you do not have the opportunity to meet them because it's such a small pool, then how do you combat the imposter syndrome? Because there is no visible, like tangible rewards that you can be like, oh, the work I'm putting in is finally starting to show.
That's a very rich question. Chimendo or Tolu, who wants to go first? Who wants to address the question? I think I'll leave it to you both.
Okay. I'll just say something very short and maybe I'll allow to continue from there. I always tell people and that you are given a vision for a reason. You see a vision for a reason. And you know how you go for a pitch competition and then you have to make other people buy your idea, buy into your idea because you're the only one that understand what you have seen. First of all, for you to have started something, it means there's something that you have seen. There's a need that you know that needs to be met. Like there's a vision that you have seen, right? So if that vision was very clear, like if that need you saw made a lot of sense to you, sometimes the reward you might not break even. So in literal terms or maybe in a business world, we'll call it breaking even, right? So sometimes there are businesses where you don't break even in years. It happens like to even the biggest businesses too as well. So the fact that you're not breaking even now doesn't necessarily mean that it is not a lucrative business, right? So I think you have to look at it from that point of view as well. But the main point is that before you started that business, I'm sure there was something that you saw. There was a need that you know that this need needs to be met, right? And no one can see your vision better than you. You can. The best you can do is sell it. The best you can do is sell it the best way you can. And that's why I said everybody's a brand and you need to be a very good marketer. You need to know how to sell yourself, So I would leave the rest to Tolu to answer. But then I just wanted to point out these very foundational, very key things like this is the vision that you have seen, this is a need that I'm very sure that you saw before going into that business. And you need to understand that it's okay that you don't break even immediately. Like there are businesses where you don't break even immediately. So you have to go back to your books. Okay, so and how do I break even? At what point do I break even? And then be sure that that is a need that there's always something, to be honest, there are so many needs to be met. So I'm pretty sure that there are needs with regards to that business that you are doing. And at some point you will break even. You just have to believe in it because you started it. So you saw that vision. So it's okay for you to believe in it and just continue and know that you're going to break even and just go back to your books and, see. And sometimes it could be that maybe you're supposed to be pricing. It could be pricing. It could be issues with pricing too as well, so, or marketing. It could be any of these things, right? So yeah, you just go back to your books and yeah, I think I'll have to continue from there. Just wanted to put in that.
Okay, thank you, Chimede, and thank you, Trini, for that question. And I want to start by saying congratulations that you have dared to start and also to put yourself in a space where there aren't, so many people, or you are a pioneer, and that takes a lot of courage because I've been there and I'm there. But I want to speak to the confidence of owning your space, really, and true confidence doesn't require dominating a room, because I think from your question, I'm bringing out that how can I own this space? How can I be an authority in there, and so on and so forth. I think that true confidence requires, showing up with clarity than any other thing. It's about your value, your expertise. It's about being genuinely curious about, what it is that space needs to succeed, and also continuous learning is very key and very important. Um, Building confidence around work, and again, I'm sharing from my own experience. Back to the question of preparing meticulously. You see, you can never go wrong with preparing. Preparation, as they say that preparation meets opportunities, opportunities meet preparation. Preparation is that thing that stems confidence in you because people are looking for value, right? And they want to know that you know what you're talking about, regardless of where you come from, whether you're white, brown, yellow, whatever. The question is, do they have results? And once they see that, oh, this person has got results, trust me, people line up behind you. It can take a while to get there, but when you are consistent in doing what you're doing, preparing meticulously, excellently serving, meticulously doing and showing up, even when those days are like, I don't even feel like doing anything about this thing anymore. The track record gives you the permission to speak up in the spaces, and that's what I have seen personally, with my own advocacy space that I am in. It is that place where you get to, and people begin to recognize you as an authority, not because you are the pioneer, or not because no one has done good work in that space, but because you are carrying so much value that are showing results, no matter how little they are. So I would say that keep investing in the building of the confidence. There will be second guessing of yourself, absolutely. Own them, but be able to distinguish between self doubt and legitimate criticism because sometimes we confuse the two. So, and not every doubt is valid. That we feel doubt doesn't make it valid. No. Sometimes we doubt ourselves because, for the reasons of bias or marginalization, doesn't mean they're rooted in reality. They're not. And oftentimes, feedback is telling you something important. Let's pay attention to it. But that being said, you have to be able to, discern between when you feel a sense of doubt, but what is that doubt saying? Is it data that you should use, or is it just, yeah, acknowledge it as doubt, but it doesn't. On the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. So, become genuinely an expert in that domain. You have to understand that business, understand that market, understand the psychology of that client. It's work. But trust me, you will get to a place where the depth of knowledge, naturally creates this space and confidence for you. And people will come to trust the work. And before you know it, yeah, you are the expert in that area. And that's what it is.
Thank you so much, Olu. Oh my gosh, I feel like our time is so much fast spent. To be fair, we didn't start exactly on time. So one of the things that we try to do at IHA is to maintain our excellence in every area, including time management. So I think I'll kindly plead that you guys give us 5 more minutes so that we can round up. I do want us to take Esther's question and then that'll be all. Okay. So Esther said, as someone transitioning into project management, how do I overcome this feeling of I'm already late and might not meet up with might not meet up while time runs out on me. It also affects me in terms of applying for jobs. I sometimes look out for the easy ones while neglecting others because I think they might be disappointed that I'm not up to their standard. I think some of this may have been touched at some point, but I do want to give Tolu and Chiwani the opportunity to answer that and maybe all in one. So when you guys maybe chip in a little bit on that, just like what is your last comment? And then we kind of round like what is the last, would I say, pearl you want to give out to everyone who is present? So this question and then your last pearl, and then that would be all. Thank you so much, you both, for being very patient. And Tolu, you can go first.
All right, thank you. Yes, to Esther, I would like to say that I think first off is that this idea that we are late, I think we need to reframe it. There is nothing like late. When you come is when you arrive. And that people have gone ahead of you doesn't mean that, you cannot get to where you're going to. I think the most important thing is that you set your goals and then you decide on how you want to go with it. And that doesn't mean whether we are and I'm not downplaying the importance of time, especially in some content. But overall, I think that first and foremost, reframe that idea of late. What is late? And in project management cuts across many different fields. So project managers will always be needed. The question is, in what field do you want to operate? So my advice will be, carefully curate this area that you want to focus on, and then what do you need to get there? So you need to prioritize that, and then see how the best way to get there. Sorry, there's an echo there. Okay. Yeah. So I was just saying to Esther that you need to, so project management is such a wide field. So, but the question is, in what area do you want to project manage? And I would say curate that area, follow people who are in that area, or seek mentors who are in that area, take certifications in that area, and then tailor work towards that area. And AI is, such a good tool these days, to help us, to at least jumpstart some of these ideas. You can run it through ChatGPT. This is what I'm interested in. What are the opportunities here? What are the things that I need to, so give me a step by step, and take it one step after the other. But there is nothing like late, believe me. Your morning is when you arrive, really.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Joanne, do you want to quickly, if you have anything else more, just add like your breath to it, and then what is the last thing you want to leave us with today?
Yeah, I don't really have so much to add to that. It's been answered like completely, to be fair. I would just say, I would just keep it very short and brief and just say that you're enough. There's no room too much or too big for you, just believe in yourself, have very self-confidence, research, and invest in yourself, invest in getting certifications, invest in getting skills, because these are the things that will give you confidence to stand in certain rooms or stand before certain people. When you're equipped with knowledge, it's easy for you to have conversations. It's not everybody that speaks English are knowledgeable. You have to try to get some form of education. Education doesn't necessarily end in class, right? Education could be anywhere. So just try to be very knowledgeable, be very self-aware, self-confident, and be open to criticism. So sometimes, even as a business owner, you get some bad comments, bad reviews. Like, it's okay, just look at this criticism. How best can I grow? And just try to be a better person overall. Just constantly want to grow and do the works. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much, Yuendo. That was absolutely fantastic. That was a wonderful way to wrap up today's session. Thank you so much, Yuendo. Thank you so much, Tolu. For those who are part of our mentorship program, these are our star mentors. As I said, Yuendo has been with us from the very inception. I'm so grateful to you, Yuendo. Thank you so much, Tolu. Tolu, I am loving for you to come back this year. So I hope I've won my loving. Thank you so much, everyone. Please do give us feedback. Let us know what you liked. Please, you can feel free to follow both Tolu and Chiwendo on their different social media platforms. Chiwendo is a fantastic person. Tolu, same as well. Thank you so much, you both, for spending your afternoon with us. We hope that you give us good feedback, whatever feedback, really, we kind of use it to grow. One thing we've learned today is ask questions. So please answer our questions. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you guys next time and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And I am so sorry that we extended our time, but I hope you found value for the few 10 minutes or maybe a little bit more. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.